that left earlier are back.
A total of 13 warships returned to Mayport this morning, and the hundreds of sailors aboard returned to the families they had to leave to weather the storm as best they could.
Among the ships returning today, the USS John F. Kennedy, which took part in a daring rescue mission. News Channel 4's Jim Murphy has the latest on that story.
The crew of the USS John F. Kennedy returned home to a hero's welcome. While at sea, the JFK answered the distress call from the tug Gulf Majesty, who was going down in Floyd's hurricane-force winds and rough seas.
I would say that was probably the most intense 35 minutes of my life, or my flying life anyway. The wind gusts were probably steady about 55 knots and gusting well above that. The seas were 20 to 30 feet.
These pictures, taken as the 8 crew members of the New Orleans-based tug were being saved, show only a glimpse of a mission rescuers say was like nothing they'd ever experienced.
Stuff like that, you can't simulate. You know, nobody wants to go in and simulate a hurricane conditions. So the only time you really do it is when it's for real. So this is where all the training pays off.
It would be difficult just piloting this helicopter in hurricane-like conditions, but the real tough part of this rescue mission came when one sailor had to be lowered from this Seahawk several times into waves that at times exceeded 30 feet.
As soon as you're hooked up to the hoist, you're focused, everything else recedes to the background, your training takes over, and you hardly even think about it. You just do what you know you have to do.
It's more than likely the crews of HS-11 will receive medals and appreciation for their work, but they're already receiving praise from the 8 men who now owe them their lives.
You can't say enough for them. They had the choice whether or not to come back here in those seas, and they did it without hesitation.
One thing the crew of the Kennedy won't receive is a break from the action. They're scheduled to go back out to sea Wednesday. Jim Murphy, Channel 4 Eyewitness News.
Throughout this ordeal, the tug's crew members escaped with only 2 injuries. One man received a minor cut on the head. The other has a back injury, but he was able to walk to an ambulance waiting for him at
Survivors of the sinking of a tugboat in the midst of Hurricane Floyd pulled from the waters of the Atlantic. Tonight, the survivors and heroes are home. The John F. Kennedy returned. A special News 4. Good evening, everyone. I'm Alan Janae.
And I'm Jeannie Blaylock. Welcome to this first edition, a very special edition of First News at 5. We are on the deck of the USS Kennedy. If you've seen Top Gun, and I'm sure you have, this is where the planes land, right here on the deck. And I'll tell you something, this is a crew pumped up right now.
Yeah, we're in some slight winds right now, sitting here at Mayport, but this is really nothing compared with what they had to deal with. At points during the operation, the rescue operation, the water actually came up to the bridge. That's over 70 feet off the surface of the ocean. An incredible rescue and really a wonderful story to tell.
Yeah, I asked the guys, what did the waves sound like? Now, these are the guys that were lost in the sea trying to be rescued, and they said first it sounded like a train roaring down your back, and then when it came the other way, it was like a jet slamming by you, and then you felt like you were hit with a sledgehammer. So, I mean, it was something else. Now, right over here, this is a Seahawk helicopter. This is one of the helicopters that went down to rescue the guys. If I can open the door here, I'll show you. The pilot we talked to today sat right in that seat, and I'll tell you something. I say hats off to them. They are pumped up, proud, and very fired up. How old are you?
26.
26, and you are?
I'm 23.
You're 23. I don't know. Can anything else in your life be this exciting?
No, never.
They had a signal on this screen, but most of the time, the visibility, 0.
When the rain hits the windshield, you can't see you have no visibility out the front. It just looks like someone painted it white. So we're looking visibility off the side, and no kidding, when we flew over on top of them, they were kind of out in front, but there's no way to see them. The way we saw them was I was looking out the side, and if you could take something about the size of a quarter and cover it over the window, if that would have been covering over, we would have never seen them.
I tell you something, that's what he's saying, that when they looked down out of that helicopter, they saw a dot the size of a quarter, and if they had passed by it, they would have never found them. They may have been able to make one more pass before nightfall. If they hadn't been able to do that, who knows what would happen to those guys.
Yeah, the incredible part of that story also is that they were able to see the barge that the tug had been towing and determine from the way in which that barge was moving in the water, the direction which the raft was likely to have gone, and that's when they were able to spot it. And it's just amazing in the seas. They had no signaling beacon. They had nothing out there with almost 0 visibility at times that they were able to find them. For a lot of them, of course, today was the wonderful homecoming, and really we were able to experience some great moments of joy when they came back. Here's a look at that. They waited and watched, hoping for a glimpse of the heroes and the survivors. Survivor Gerald Keith's sister had some plans.
I'm going to hug him, that's for sure. And then I'm going to razz him. That's my job.
As the first survivor, Kim Brooks, with a back injury, was helped off, there was some applause. Then the reunions. Helicopter pilot Joseph D'Angelo, now a hero, kissed his family and knew he was home. Do you think you're sort of beaming with pride here?
Yes, we are. We're proud of our daddy.
Swimmer Tim Lemmerman was in the water 2 days ago, fighting 40-foot seas in a desperate rescue. Special homecoming for you here?
Yeah, a little too much, I guess. We're just happy to be home, really.
Yeah.
Happy to get these guys home to their families.
But the survivor, Kim Brooks, maybe it was just right.
It looked like angels coming from heaven. That's exactly what it looked like. Thank God. That's for sure. And thank the Navy, too. They were great.
There we see one of the Seahawk helicopters, one of the Seahawk helicopters, of course, used to rescue the members of this Gulf Majesty tugboat that went down now at the bottom of the Atlantic.
And what you just saw a few moments ago were the crews getting ready for deployment. You know, they were going to deploy, and then they had to come back, and now they're going back out. They got a little bit more chance to be with their families. The Navy was working very hard to give them some quality time at home. These folks here are wondering, Tim Deegan, what the weather's going to be like on the way to the Mediterranean because they're worried about Gert.
Well, I'll be very curious to hear what your track is. Of course, they have great forecasters that are keeping them out of Gert's way. But Gert is going to make a turn toward the north, headed toward Bermuda, which pretty much puts Gert between the Med and us. So I'm sure they'll be watching that very closely. Let's come back home and take a look at what we have, because speaking of the Navy, over at NAS Jax, they're having the big Rock the Boat concert this afternoon and this evening. So we're going to zoom in on NAS Jax and show you weather looking pretty good, although I must say there is a slight chance of a shower. Now I want to expand the picture and talk a little bit about what's left.
Be at home also overjoyed people with the thought of what actually happened here. I've seen a lot of pride today from all of the sailors coming off the ship, and of course the pilots and the swimmers, and naturally the people who were rescued.
I'll tell you kind of a fun note. Some of the guys who were in the rescue queue, you know, you've seen those milk mustache ads. They're thinking about doing that because really they are heroes, and they deserve a fun moment. So we're going to look for the milk mustaches and that photo coming up pretty soon. But you know, this hurricane really put a kind of a kink in the plans. There are about 5,000 on the ship, and they will be deployed on Wednesday. But you know what they're all talking about? Well, gee, at least we get to see all the football before we go.
Yeah, the storm is now gone, so the games must go on.
The Jacksonville University football team has canceled its home opener scheduled for tomorrow. The Dolphins were supposed to host Challenge, but that's in North Carolina. But one game that will go on is one that fans will have waited for all year: Florida versus Tennessee. The Gators are looking for a chance for revenge in the swamp, and I tell you, Jeff Prosser is down there right now, and revenge is the talk, right, Jeff?
Right now we're taking a live look at the bridge of the USS John F. Kennedy, and with me here is the captain, a man who was out really on his maiden voyage as captain of the Kennedy when all of this occurred. Mike Miller, congratulations to you and your crew for a terrific job.
Thanks, Alan. It was a very eventful first time out as captain of this great ship.
You must have had a couple of moments at which it must have been very difficult to be captain, a couple of moments of decision that no doubt caused you a lot of concern, the first being turning the Kennedy around to go after this tugboat. What were your thoughts at that time?
Well, Alan, we had successfully evaded to the east, and we were about 450 miles east, and the call came in that there were people in the water. I sat down with Admiral Carlos Johnson, the JFK Battle Group commander, and we looked at it with our meteorological people and our ops people and said, there's nobody else who can do this job. So we turned back into the seas, and it was a rough ride. The ship is designed to ride rough. The sailors are designed to and have trained to take this on, and they did a magnificent job all the way around.
You had times, I understand, where water was coming up over the bow.
In point of fact, we had a couple of our life rafts that are right here at flight deck level. That's 60 feet above the water line, and the waves kind of broke over the flight deck.
And you lost a couple of those rafts, didn't you?
In point of fact, we did. But it was that's a cost that is well worth it.
Easy to bear, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
The other difficult moment for you as a captain must have been at the time when the helicopter put the swimmers into the water. They had to drop people down, of course, to get them into the back into the helicopter, hooked into the harnesses to be brought up. You're monitoring the situation, then what's going through your mind?
Well, we thought that we were going to have all 8 of them in a life raft, and we thought that we'd be able just to lower down the hoist and pick them up from that point. They called back and said, we found 3. They're in the water hanging onto a broomstick, of all things.
And at that point in time, I recognized we were going to have to put swimmers in the water. And now we've got, instead of just 3 people to rescue, we've really got 4. And fortunately, the rescue swimmers were so excellently trained. And the Navy does such a wonderful job with them. They were able to get all 3 of them out of the water. Pilots did a magnificent job in extremely difficult circumstances. Captain Mike Miller, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And again, congratulations to you and your crew for a terrific job. I think a lot of people are very proud of you today. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay, where are we going now? Let's go to Jeannie and find out a little bit more today about
I got
the
to show
pilot.
you something. This, right here, Paul, you know what this is. This is an up-close shot here. Looks like some kind of yellow piece of equipment, but this thing right here saved these men's lives. It sent out a radio signal to the Coast Guard in Miami, and that helped Chris Kessel, one of the pilots who actually went in the rescue team, find them. How close did it get you to their raft and to where they were bobbing around?
It got us to about approximately about a mile. We had a pointer in the aircraft bring us towards the signal, and then we got eyes on. They popped smoke, and next thing we knew, we were in the hover, and we were bringing them up.
Now, if you hadn't had this, I mean, the guys had it on their chest like this, and they were holding it like a baby, would you have found them?
I doubt it. 3 people in that kind of sea conditions, I sure see that we would have found them.
Well, congratulations to you. What an incredible rescue. We'll have more from the Kennedy in just a moment.
Unbelievable.
USS Kennedy, Paul, if you could just take a shot there. Oh, look at these nice guys. These are the guys who did the search and rescue. They are now running after all of our strips that are blowing away on the carrier. You may have missed that shot, but I'll tell you, these guys will do anything. They
Yet another rescue operation by the John F. Kennedy here today.
All right. Thank you, guys. They really are kind. I tell you, sometimes you hear that maybe they're Top Gun and maybe they're cocky or whatever, but these guys have been so considerate. I flew out here on a helicopter this morning very, very early, and they have been nothing but kind all day.
Mm-hmm. And the modesty has been remarkable.
And they really have. They saved lives. They're heroes. I guess it'll all set into them a little bit later on.
Let's see how our Friday afternoon traffic is going now. Let's turn to Linda Baker in the traffic center. Linda, thanks very much. When it rains hard like it did last week and you're out on the road, there are problems. There's one thing you're going to need. It's a good set of windshield wipers.
Right. Of course, the guys on this carrier group of the USS Kennedy that you're looking at right now have heavier things in mind, but for your car, Ken Merrill has some advice.
That's true, Jimmy. Thanks, Ken. You're taking a look at one of the helicopters, one of the Seahawk helicopters involved in this incredible rescue. You can see the flag flapping in the wind out there because it is a very windy day. Let's turn to Tim Deegan now, find out a little bit more about our weather. It is beautiful still. You're on the deck of the USS John F. Kennedy after an incredible week for this aircraft carrier and its crews, and of course the crews of the Dragon Slayers, the Seahawk helicopters that rescued people. Duval County schools will reopen on Monday, and things will get back to normal for most of the rest of the community as well.
Many students are still coming back in town with their parents, and so that's another reason the schools are not open yet. Several are being cleaned up still. Landmark
right now at the logo of the Dragon Slayers. This are the helicopters which were involved in the rescue this week of 8 sailors who had to abandon ship from the Gulf Majesty. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back in just a moment with one of the Navy swimmers that went into the water.
It has a little bit. It's nice to be able to save somebody and have them back with their families this evening.
And something that's really cool, look right here in his pocket. Can you show us that? One of the guys, Dirk, you rescued, saved his life. He gave you his pocket knife, really important to him.
It was nice. I can't believe he gave it to me. It's not, we don't do this for awards or prizes or anything. We just do it because we have to do it. It needs to be done.
Because you know what you're doing, you got a big heart, and those guys say, wow. And that's all we can say. It's an incredible rescue. We'll have lots more to show you from the USS Kennedy. First news at 5:30.
Rescue 8 people stranded in the ocean in the middle of Hurricane Floyd. Grace Keith's son, Jerry, was one of the men rescued from the ocean. She and her daughter are relieved. Of course, the whole ordeal now is over. 12 News anchor Jeannie Blaylock is on the Kennedy tonight with more on this. Quite a story, Jeannie.
Oh, no kidding. Gerald is from St. Mary's, and this is the man here who went down, pulled him out of the water, Shad Hernandez. And Shad, now you're like, how tall?
I'm 6'1".
Okay, now can you tell me how tall the waves were over you?
They were about 30 feet over my head.
30 feet over your head. And I got to ask you, were you scared?
Yeah, I was scared.
I'm glad you were honest about that. But I'll tell you something. It was really neat to see you and Gerald talking all day on the ship together, and here's what that looked like. know him?
Well, he's definitely my hero. There's no doubt about that. No doubt.
And what does it feel like to look at this man and realize he would have died if it hadn't been for you?
I'm glad I was there. I'm glad to meet this man. He's a good man. I've talked to him a lot, and I'm glad I got to know him.
I noticed you guys walking around together. You gonna do something for him special?
Try to take him out to dinner if he lets me.
Gerald and Shad have traded phone numbers, and for Shad, it was his first real rescue swim, and he said, yeah, he was scared.
When I first saw him, he told me I was a man. And I was just like telling him, come with me. We're getting out of here.
You're the man, huh?
Yeah.
And a few hours ago, Gerald got to do what he wanted to do, hug his mom and his sister from St. Mary's. What a reunion. Ah, doesn't that look? Gerald is coughing up some blood. He's been in and out of the infirmary today, but the doctors are taking good care of him, and we wish him well. Donna?
You bet. Okay, Jeannie.
Thank you, Jane. Well, all of Mayport's ships are back and forth this evening. They went out to sea to avoid that storm, of course. As 12 News reporter Angela Spears shows us, one sailor came home to an unforgettable surprise.
The sun rises on a new day, returning in the horizon ships that outran Floyd's vicious winds and rough seas. On land, a new life awaits the return of his father.
We got a Red Cross message out to him.
Polly Winchell gave birth on Tuesday. Her husband Jonathan left to beat the storm on Monday. She says she was determined to be here today.
I'm loaded with painkillers. I told him I was going to be here with Luke waiting for him.
A precious moment that not even hurricane, now tropical storm Floyd could damage.
I love him. Love him to death. We just can't let go of him now.
Well, Jonathan Winchell, as you see there, did hold his son, but only until feeding time. He'll be able to spend a few more days with the baby, but then Winchell will head out to sea next week.
Well, Linda Baker is
The deck of the USS Kennedy, and tonight we're with heroes. These guys are true heroes. The men that saved those 8 guys lost at sea in Hurricane Floyd.
Difficult and terrible waters of Hurricane Floyd. It's all coming your way next.
My life.
He's a survivor. This man is just one of his heroes.
It was up to us, or else those people were, quite likely going to perish.
The crew of the USS John F. Kennedy risked their lives to pull 8 people from the giant seas churned up by Hurricane Floyd.
Survival was on the mind. That's all I was thinking about. Really a miracle that they even found us.
A miracle nobody will ever forget. And that's true. They will never, ever forget this. Good evening. I'm Jeannie Blaylock on the deck of the USS John F. Kennedy.
And I'm Alan Janae. We are here on the Kennedy, which arrived home at Mayport today after a journey in which the crew of the Kennedy managed to save 8 lives. Today, the Kennedy returning from that short trip into Hurricane Floyd. On board, many heroes and the 8 survivors plucked from the crashing seas. This story began on Wednesday. The tugboat Gulf Majesty tried to outrun Hurricane Floyd more than 300 miles off our coast in the Atlantic. It didn't make it. The tug began sinking fast. Its crew began jumping ship. The USS Kennedy was the only ship nearby, and it was moving away from the hurricane at the time. The ship got a distress call, and then it turned around, and it moved back into the storm to begin its rescue. Waves crashed over the Kennedy's deck. Heavy winds rocked the boat, some waves crashing over the bow, but the Kennedy crew steamed ahead to help. Now let's take a look at some pictures we got from the Navy today. The only photographs of this dangerous rescue in winds at 60 miles an hour, waves at times reaching 40 feet, even more. Navy swimmers jumped into the sea in these conditions to rescue 8 crew members of Gulf Majesty after the Gulf Majesty went down. And really an amazing story, Jeannie, that this actually happened and was successful.
Oh, it's just truly amazing. I came this morning very early on a helicopter and landed here on the deck, and I kept asking the guys, has it sunk in yet? I mean, you're heroes. Everybody's talking to you. Time Magazine is here. The networks are here. Everybody is here covering the story. And they're still very, very modest. And I keep thinking, during the hurricane, we were not allowed to go across the bridges. And yet they were out here on this helicopter doing an amazing rescue. And we talked today to some of the survivors. This photo shows that the ocean, furious with Floyd, raking the deck 60 feet up.
It was like being on a roller coaster. Big roller coaster.
Some were smacked around for 8 hours. But they never said, we're going to die.
At least I wasn't worried. I knew they was coming to me. I knew they was coming to me.
But they did try to joke.
We laughed about it. We made a joke about it. Oh, yeah, you only need 1 stitch. It ain't no big deal. And
meanwhile, the blood was gushing.
Yeah.
And they told me they knew somebody was watching. Well, what do you think? What was it?
Yeah, well, it was probably God speaking to you in a weird way.
Their life raft, only 10 feet across, and they said it started to fold up like a taco. But on the left of this picture there, the dark spot, the Navy rescue diver.
You guys,
When you guys saw the rescue guys from the Navy, what did you want to do?
Oh, man, I wanted to kiss them.
Well, I'll tell you something. They are so excited. And Sean Whitfield is one of the rescue team, and so is Dave Matthews. And I've been so curious how you pull the guys out of the water. Can you show me?
Yes, ma'am. We take this, and we come up behind them, ask them to raise their arms above their heads.
Oh, okay.
And we have them like this. We pull it high up on their back, and we lift them up in the helicopter.
And you tell them just to relax and do nothing, right?
Yes,
the guys
ma'am.
were saying they were screaming and screaming, and you said, hey, just let me do my job. And Dave Matthews, he had an incredible position. Can you show us what you were doing with the door open during this rescue?
Well, as long as the door is open, I was laying down on the floor of the aircraft, looking down at my survivors who were trying to hook up with my swimmer to the hook. And as soon as they were clear and not getting crashed by waves, I'd lift them up out of the water and get them into the helo as fast and safe as possible.
It was a hydraulic lift, right?
It was hydraulic
Sometimes you could see them, sometimes you couldn't see them, right?
Sometimes they disappear for 5-10 seconds under the crashing waves.
And was your heart beating so fast it was going to come out of your throat?
I was starting getting really worried about survivors and my swimmer, but he was a strong swimmer and he did a really good job the whole time, and we got them all back safe.
How much of a miracle was this?
I don't know about miracle, but we were trained for 2 years to do this, and we were called to do our job, and we did.
That's awesome. That was really, really awesome. So hats off to the Dragon Slayers, and Alan, it's something else.
Yeah, these guys are just terrific, and no question we're getting our money's worth on our tax dollars for all of this, guys. Today, of course, there was an emotional homecoming. Let's take a look. Tim Brooks is the first survivor helped off the mighty John F. Kennedy. A smile as he remembers the moment he saw the helicopter overhead.
It looked like angels coming from heaven. That's exactly what it looked like. Thank God. That's for sure. And thank the Navy, too. They were great.
On the dock, hugs and kisses with proud family.
It's wonderful. I'm so happy that he's home and he's safe, and we're happy that he's home.
The sister of survivor Gerald Keith kept her eyes on her brother.
I don't know, I think I'm still sort of in shock. I'm just so glad to see him.
There was talk about the roughest moment.
The hard part was definitely the guy going in the water trying to, swimming around out there, trying to fight. He was just a few feet away from the survivors, and he couldn't see them. The waves were that big.
When the Kennedy was getting ready to pull out of port to get out of Floyd's way, there were no aircraft on board at all. But late, before the Kennedy left, the Admiral said, let's take some helicopters. Today, he told one of the crew members it was divine providence.
We never know when we go to sea, and helicopters just give another added dimension so that you can take care of other people, whether it's our own ship or whether it's somebody else that's out at sea.
The heroes and survivors have a story to tell, something for young fathers to share with their children.
This is kind of a little payback for getting off a month for baby leave, and we end up being the heroes, so.
Lots to be happy about. Of course, there's so many people out there today. Everybody wants to see who was involved in all of this. Everybody peeking through the fence outside wants to say, who are the pilots, who are the swimmers, and who are those who were rescued. So really some wonderful moments today when they came back, and some incredible challenges out there in the water. And we're sitting here on the deck in this helicopter when it's not moving. But can you imagine, though, 60-mile-an-hour winds?
I can't at all.
At times, they had to tilt the helicopter up.
Oh, yeah.
In a fashion 45 degrees, I think, if I'm correct, or so that they could make sure that they were able to do what they needed to do with those waves beneath them.
Well, they tried to be 450 miles away from the hurricane, but the captain told me they had to go in 250 miles closer than they wanted to try to rescue these guys, and they did it. Now, nearly a dozen other ships returned after a week deployment. One sailor returned home a father. His wife gave birth on Tuesday, and there it is. Congratulations for the little baby. And there are so many, many acts of heroism and bravery still ahead tonight. But first, we need to bring you the very latest on the remnants of Floyd, and we take it back to the studio. And Donna.
Hi, Jeannie. Well, Hurricane Floyd is now being blamed.
Tonight on the deck of the John F. Kennedy, you're taking a look at some of the helicopters, the Dragon Slayers involved in the rescue of 8 crew members from Gulf Majesty. This chopper right here, one of those who was involved and was able to save those 8 caught in the midst of Hurricane Floyd.
It had to be the most dangerous maneuver that I've ever heard about. I tell you, other people have done courageous things, but this ranks right up there at the top. Every week we're going to start something new. We're going to look at a man or a woman who stands out in the headline, who stands tall above the crowd and helps make people feel comfortable.
This week the spotlight shines on somebody who is a calming voice to all of us in the midst of Hurricane Floyd. Here's 12 on your sides, Ken Amaro. When we saw the governor asking for some solutions to future evacuation problems, including widening the interstates, building some new interchanges, and even the construction of a new interstate all the way to Atlanta. And Jeannie, certainly there were a lot of calming voices, but none more calming than the voice of some of these rescuers arriving here from the John F. Kennedy in the water to recover those survivors of the Gulf Majesty.
Some of the guys said they saw their feet dangling. Best sight they had ever seen when the helicopter lowered down. Now let's go back to Donna in this. Tell you, just to give you an idea of just how high this water came. Now we are 6 stories off the ocean, and when this hurricane was going during the rescue, the water was splashing up over the side of the ship, over the side of that deck. Tim, that is incredible, 60-foot waves.
There were some really awesome moments in the midst of this rescue, perhaps none more awesome than the moment at which one of the swimmers was sitting on one of the rafts, and then all of a sudden a strong wave came up and a really strong gust of wind, and he ended up in the water really dozens of feet away. Let's hear what that swimmer had to say.
Probably 30, 35-foot swell came. At the same time, a gust of wind took the helicopter in opposite directions, and I was actually still attached to the helicopter at that point, and I was thrown from the raft approximately 30 yards through the air, on the other side of a big swell, and pretty much just lost all track of what I was doing.
Didn't know where you were.
I had no clue where the survivors were and where I was at that point.
Tim Lemmerman, one of the swimmers involved here, and there was that moment, probably that moment right there, that was probably the most difficult for all the people involved in this rescue.
Man, isn't that something? And they said when they got back to deck, there was sort of a hush, kind of a quiet, because some of the men were injured. But then when they realized everybody was okay, it was just, wow, what a cheer.
The most severe injury here, a strained back suffered by Kim Brooks, one of the survivors of the Gulf Majesty. Everybody else was able to walk up under their own power.
Just amazing. Now let's go to Tim Deegan. Tim, you heard me mention those 60-foot high waves like a 6-story building. I just can't comprehend that.
Inside this helicopter, one of the Dragon Slayers involved in the rescue here, but none of that really mattered. What it came down to was visual sight identification when they found the last 5 survivors of Gulf Majesty. We'll be back live on the decks of the Kennedy in a little bit.
Weekend for the deck to Dan now.
Thanks, guys.
All right, Dan, thanks very much. Some final thoughts from the decks of the USS John F. Kennedy in a moment. The deck of the John F. Kennedy, you know, when the Kennedy decided to pull out to sea to avoid Hurricane Floyd, there was one critical decision, and that was the one made by Admiral Mike Johnson, who said, well, why don't we bring along some helicopters? Because initially there were no plans to bring any aircraft at all, and when he decided that, he said, let's bring some Dragon Slayers, let's get some Seahawks out there. It was the decision that saved lives.
It saved 8 lives, and what a different story it would be tonight if even one man had been lost, but nobody was lost. And so tonight, we want to salute one more time the men and the Dragon Slayers.